We were reading the 13th chapter yesterday, giving description of the two aspects of the divine, Purusha and Prakriti. Now we shall, today, though it was not complete yesterday, we shall jump to the 15th chapter, which is the most important portion of the Gita, because it deals with the Purushottama Yoga. Purushottama Yoga, according to the Hindu philosophy or the Advaita philosophy, it gives a description of the divine and its various aspects. We shall read only Papa's commentary, a portion of it, and then we go to chapter 18, where certain important slokas also we can cover today. Lamp was not. Here. This is portion of the 15th chapter, Purushottama Yoga. Now the Lord explains how the individual soul comes into being. We are talking about the Advaita, means only one existence, God is one. There cannot be two. Then how can the individual souls come into being? Individual souls mean there are many, there is diversity. That contradicts the first statement. Now let us see what it means. The Lord says that a portion of His own Supreme Self assumes in the world of activity the nature of the immortal individual soul. He is not different from the one Supreme Being. He says that a portion of His own Supreme Self assumes in the world of activity the nature of the immortal individual soul. The individual soul is also immortal and not different from the Supreme Being. Individual soul is only a portion. It's only a portion of that all-pervading absolute existence. Again, how can we call it a portion when the Supreme cannot be divided? The explanation is, it appears to be a portion, that's all. It assumes a separate individuality. The soul thus puts on five senses and the mind inherent in the Prakriti. When he assumes a sense of individuality, the Supreme Being, the all-pervading truth or God, himself puts on a mask of ignorance and assumes individuality. The moment he assumes individuality, he puts on five senses and the mind inherent in the Prakriti. He identifies himself with the body and with the mind and the five senses. At the time of the Lord's assumption of the body, he brings with him, and at its dissolution he takes away with him the senses and the mind, just as the breeze carries with it the fragrance from the flowers. At the time of the Lord's assumption of the body, when the Lord, that is the individual soul, assumes the body, he brings with him, and at his dissolution takes with him the senses and the mind, just as the breeze carries with it the fragrance of the flowers. The moment the Lord enters the body, he attaches himself to the senses and the mind in the body, rather the body in the womb of the mother, we can say. And when he, after taking birth and grown up, he drops the body. At that time also, the Lord carries with him the mind, intellect and the senses, just as air carries the, fragrance with it. Here, the withdrawal of the senses is from their respective seats, which are the 5 sense organs of the body, namely the ear, the eye, the skin, the tongue and the nose, and the mind stuff. These are the senses. The subtle senses are withdrawn from these gross senses, physical senses, and carried away by the soul when it leaves the body. So long as the Lord, as the individual soul is embodied, he enjoys through the organs the sense objects. As long as the soul, individual soul, remains in the body, he enjoys the sense objects through these senses. The ignorant do not know that he it is who leaves the body, lives in the body, and experiences through the senses. The ignorant people do not know that it is the Lord himself. It is who is living in the body, enjoys through the senses. This is because they are under the influence of the gunas, which have thrown a veil over their wisdom. They do not realize that it is the Lord himself who is enjoying through the senses. It is because it is covered by a mask of ignorance. The true yogi, who strives with determination and faith, obtains the vision of the Lord after realizing the Atman. Now, after the proper sadhana, the mask of ignorance is removed and he realizes his oneness with the Atman. But those who are of the dull intellect and without right discipline, however hard they may struggle, cannot behold him. Others who are not doing sadhana, who are of dull intellect, cannot realize him. Now here the concluding para of this chapter is, the aspirant can clearly perceive the stages through which he has to pass in his upward progress before he could realize the highest summit of God vision and attain the knowledge of him in all his sublimity and perfection. The individual soul, caught in the grip of the lower prakriti of the gunas, The individual soul, caught in the grip of the lower prakriti of the gunas, has to shuffle off the individual sense and merge himself in his real, all-pervading, motionless, eternal existence beyond the gunas. This is the struggle. The individual soul, because of its mask of ignorance, is now identifying itself with the body, mind, intellect and the senses. Now by sadhana, he has to detach himself from this body, mind, intellect and identify himself with the Atman, with his true being and existence. That is the main purpose of sadhana. And that Atman or that individual soul then realizes that he is the Purusha or the Atman. One of the two aspects of Purushottama. You are talking about Purushottama, Purusha and Prakriti. Purusha and Prakriti are the two aspects of Purushottama. So when he identifies himself with the body, mind, intellect, he says he is Prakriti. That he is only the body. But after sadhana, he identifies himself with the Purusha, the Atman. That is one of the two aspects of Purushottama. One of the two aspects of Purushottama, Supreme Being. Here, the body, consciousness and the pairs of opposites and the cycle of birth and death are all transcended through the knowledge of the Atman. Once the individual soul realizes that he is Purusha himself, who had now removed the mask of ignorance, he is now free from the cycle of birth and death. He has transcended all the gunas, three gunas like tamas, rajas and sattva. Though he is in the body, he is above these three gunas and he has attained the state of mukti. He is called a Jivan Mukta. He has attained liberation. From this stage, the yogi rises still higher and realizes Purushottama in both his aspects. Now, this stage described here is only his identification with the Purusha. That is one of the aspects of the Purushottama. There some people stop and do not go beyond that. But certain yogis continue their sadhana further and realize something higher than that. From this stage, the yogi rises still higher and realizes Purushottama in both his aspects. He had realized Purusha, now he has to realize the Prakriti aspect also, identify himself with the Prakriti also at the same time. He has to feel that he is one with both Prakriti and Purusha at the same time. Purusha and the exalted, higher and creative energy, the Prakriti. He has to identify himself with both at the same time. Till then he was only identifying himself with the Prakriti, not with Purusha. Now, after sadhana, he identifies himself with the Purusha only, not with the Prakriti. Now he has to, with further sadhana, identify himself with both at the same time. Now the yogi reaches a status which baffles expression. Being one with all existences, both manifest and unmanifest, he is eternally an illumined and all blissful spiritual being. Now he has become or identified himself with the Purushottama, and he knows that he has now two aspects, Purusha and Prakriti. He is identifying himself with the absolute being, which is called Purushottama, which will give him peace and bliss absolute. There is no higher stage to be attained. This is the culmination of all sadhana. Now we shall read from the 18th chapter some important verses. This sloka called Ishvara Sarvabhutanam Hriday Hrideshi Arjuna Tishtadi Brahmayan Sarvabhutani Yandrarudhani Maya. The Lord dwells in the hearts of all beings, and by his Maya causes all beings to revolve as though mounted on a machine. The Lord dwells in the hearts of all beings, and by his Maya causes all beings to revolve as though mounted on a machine. Means God is seated in all beings, all created beings, and it is He sitting in their hearts makes every form to act in various ways according to His will. This truth is made evident by the way in which Sri Krishna and Arjuna made their appearance on the battlefield. Arjuna, representing the Jivatma, was mounted on the chariot, which was analogous to the human body. The chariot moved and the warrior waged war. The former was unconscious of its movements, while the latter was conscious of the part he played in the war. That hero who first felt that he was the author of his karma was later obliged to learn that all karma actually belonged to Ishvara, Sri Krishna. Sri Krishna drove the chariot, but he took no weapon and waged the war. This is giving a lot of description about the one dwelling in the body and making the body active. Here, Arjuna is compared to the Jivatman, and the Lord seated in everybody's heart is making the body active. The Lord is the charioteer of Arjuna. Arjuna's chariot is considered the body. Arjuna is the Jivatma. The hero who first felt that he was the author of his karma was later obliged to learn that all karma actually belonged to Ishvara. Jivatma, that is Arjuna, felt that he was responsible for fighting the war, he was responsible for killing all those people who were standing on the opposite side of the army, and felt that he was responsible for anything that was to happen by way of killing and so on and so forth. But Sri Krishna made it clear to him that he is not responsible. He, the Lord seated in the chariot, is responsible for all the killings, for all the activities done by him. In other words, while the presence of the Lord causes all work to take place systematically, he remains actionless. The Lord Krishna had decided only to remain in the chariot and drive the chariot, but not to take any weapon in his hand to fight the war. So he was actionless as far as the fighting was concerned. He, the Lord, who resides as witness in the hearts of all, does no work, but his presence propels the beings to do their duties. The Lord seated in our hearts is not doing anything, but at the same time his very presence propels the being to do their duties. It is because of his presence that each being is made to do all those acts. The meaning of the word Arjuna is he who is white in color or pure in nature. He who is pure at heart is competent to know the truth. One who is pure in heart alone can know the truth. The Jivatma cannot know the truth until he makes himself pure by sadhana. In the presence of the Paramatman, Maya Shakti assumes the power of action. In the presence of the Paramatman, Maya Shakti assumes the power of action. It is not the Lord who is himself acting, but because of the Lord's presence, the Maya Shakti, Shakti means the power, is acting. The power is emanating from the Lord alone. Not only does it do karma, not only does it do karma constantly, but it also compels beings under its control to work in obedience to its law and regime. Because of this Maya Shakti, it makes all these bodies act according to the Lord's will. Like doors tethered to a revolving wheel, they are engaged in action. They have no power of their own. They are made to act. Ignorant as the beings are, they imagine that they are themselves self-initiated workers. But each body thinks that it is himself acting. It is himself taking the responsibility of all the actions, though the real actor is sitting inside them. They entertain the notion that the choice of doing or not doing a thing is all in their hands. They think that they can either remain quiet or act. It is their own will. But no, it is the will of the Lord seated in their heart. They are made to act or not to act. Because of this notion, they get increasingly entangled in Maya. Because of the sense of doership, they are getting more and more entangled in Maya. Because they have to reap the fruits of their own actions for which they have made themselves responsible. He is a sadhaka who changes his attitude and holds on to the conviction that he is not the doer, but that he is only an instrument in the hands of the Lord. Now, as soon as the sadhana begins, the first duty of the sadhaka is to understand that he is not the doer. It is the Lord seated in his heart. He is making the body active. So, as he himself, the ego himself is not responsible for the actions. So that is the first thing a sadhana has to practice. Sadhaka who changes his attitude and holds on to the conviction that he is not the doer, but he is only an instrument in the hands of the Lord. The surrender attitude right away begins. All the jivatmas, ranging from the high to the low, are only tools of Ishvara in his cosmic activity. All the sadhaka, all the jivatmas, all the individual souls are only puppets or tools in the hands of the Lord. It is with this attitude that the sadhaka should work out the karma inherent in him. When any activity is done, it is the duty of the sadhaka to take this attitude. Otherwise, he will be increasing only the prarabdha which is already accumulated to his debit, and he has to take again any number of births and deaths to work out his karma. Now when he practices this, that it is the Lord himself who is doing it and not he, and that he is not the doer, he will be free from the effects of the action that he is doing. It is with this attitude that the sadhaka should work out the karma inherent in him. Instead of claiming agency, he ought to submit to a willing vehicle. To be a willing vehicle. He should not claim the agency. For the work done through the body, he should not claim the sense of doership. Instead, he must submit to be a willing vehicle. He must feel that he is only a vehicle in the hands of the Supreme Being seated in his heart. Therefore, the Lord says, seek refuge in Him alone with all your heart. By His grace you will gain supreme peace and the eternal abode. So, final advice to Arjuna, seek refuge in Him alone with all your heart. By His grace you will gain supreme peace and the eternal abode. The most propitious and consequential act that Jivatma can do for himself is to take refuge in the Lord. That is the only thing the sadhaka or Jivatma can do. He must submit to the will of the Lord. He must feel that it is the Lord Himself is acting through the body. To claim the body as his own, that is, identify himself with the body, to consider himself as the agent of all his activities, to feel that he is doing all the actions, that is, to take upon the sense of doership, to conceive of himself as a person of consequence in the world. All these attitudes contribute to foster the impermanent jivahood of the Jivatman. If this is done, he is only gathering strength to his ego sense, making the ego stronger and stronger. The purpose of the sadhaka is to erase the ego gradually by his sadhana. But this attitude of taking the responsibility for his actions, to identify himself with the body and to consider that he is something very important, makes the ego stronger and stronger. The opposite way of doing sadhana. They run counter to taking refuge in the Lord. Instead of taking refuge in the Lord, it is asserting that I am great, I am going to do this, I am not going to do that. That I become stronger and stronger. The relationship between the Jivatman and the Paramatman is the same as that between the wave and the ocean. Now, what is the relationship between the Jivatman and Paramatman? That is the individual soul and the oversoul or Parabrahman. The relationship is between the Jivatman and Paramatman is the same as that between the wave and the ocean. The waves are there in the ocean. The waves are not different from the ocean, though they appear to be different. We talk about the waves and the ocean separately. But at the same time, they are not different, they are one. The same water appears as waves. So the same Paramatman appears as Jivatman. There is absolutely no difference. This is according to the Advaita philosophy. The Jivatman has no body of his own. The Jivatman has no body of his own. The forms of both are impermanent. They are always in a state of flux. The activities of the wave are actually those of the ocean. The Jivatma has no separate form of his own. The activities of the wave are actually those of the ocean. How the activities Have the waves got separate activities? No. Whatever the waves are only that of the ocean. The wave can never have an existence independent of the ocean. The wave cannot separately exist independent of the ocean. Like that, the Jivatma has no separate existence independent of the Paramatman. The activities, all activities of the individual soul are in reality the sport of the Lord. All the activities of the individual souls are in reality the sport of the Lord. We see so many people acting in different ways, and we give them credit to their activities if we consider them as good, and we blame them for their activity if we consider them as bad. But all these activities, the so-called good or bad activities, are all the sports of the Lord, the Leela of the Lord. The Lord Himself is acting through all these different forms, which we call some as good, some as bad. They have neither individuality nor existence independent of the Lord. Those players have no separate individuality. They are not independent of the Lord. Knowing this truth and attuning one's life to this truth is the act of taking refuge in the Lord. Taking refuge in the Lord means knowing that the Lord Himself is the player, and no individual is responsible for the actions done through him or her. It is the Lord Himself who is acting through all these forms. Knowing this means taking refuge in the Lord means knowing this, having this knowledge. After explaining all this to the Arjuna, the Lord says, "Thus has wisdom more profound than all profundities been declared to you by me. Reflect upon it fully and act as you choose." Finally, the Lord says, "I have explained everything to you. All the secrets have been opened to you, conveyed to you. Now, He does not say you should act like this or you should act like that. Knowing all this, that is, reflect upon it fully and act as you choose." The Lord is leaving it to Arjuna to decide how he should act. That truth is said to be profound, which is hard to grasp. That other truth is said to be a secret, which is kept hidden from others. So here both have been conveyed to Arjuna. The laws of nature are both profound and secret. We know of some of them while the others still remain hidden from us. We know of some of them while the others still remain hidden from us. Many of the secrets of nature are known to us and remained unknown for ages. Electricity may be cited as an example. Modern man has learned to harness this great power. Science deals elaborately with this phenomenon in nature. Science being to light many other features and possibilities of nature. It has made tremendous strides in modern days and is coming to make further progress. But all these are classified as secular knowledge pertaining to the mundane. All these belong to the lower Prakriti, as we mentioned yesterday. Sacred knowledge is that which deals with the divine. This knowledge is known as Brahma Vidya, and it is the oldest and the most perfect one among the sciences. Its sole purpose is to lead man from the impermanent to the permanent, from ignorance to enlightenment. Learning about the mundane things, whatever science we may learn that relates to the mundane, is not going to help us much. We have to leave that knowledge behind when we depart from this world. But the Brahma Vidya, which is the oldest science and most perfect of all sciences, the purpose of it is to lead man from the impermanent to the permanent. It abides with us always. It leads us from ignorance to enlightenment, from sorrow to beatitude, and finally from death to immortality. That is the difference between the two sciences, one relating to mundane things and the other Brahma Vidya, relating to immortality. It is practical aspect. In its practical aspect, it comes down as injunctions, what to do and what to refrain from. In the supreme science, there is no place for sophistry and dogmatic fiat. The governing principles are presented systematically and logically. Superstition and baseless belief have no place in Vedanta. All tenets, commandments and systems of yoga are presented coherently and convincingly. Man is given the freedom to investigate into the validity of this science. It is no sin, no libel to doubt the very existence of God. It is no sin, no libel to doubt the very existence of God. Nihilism, atheism and agnosticism have their due places in man's honest search into the reality. When consistently pursued, even these seemingly derogatory paths wean man from the darkness to light. Freedom is the first condition of growth, physical, mental, intellectual, ethical and spiritual. The Lord encourages Arjuna and through him all aspirants to exercise their power of understanding, inquire into yoga as daringly and inquisitively as they can, and accept and practice those principles only which they are convinced are beneficial to them. That is why the Lord said finally, act as you choose. He left it to him to understand things and act as he felt it was correct. A personality becomes great to the extent he adheres to principles. A seeker after truth must be more a watery principle than personality, and that is what Sri Krishna asked Arjuna to do. You must be a watery of principles. You should understand things and act. You should not act because merely I ask you to act. So don't depend upon personality, but act and depend upon principles. Now, another important thing is here. This is a very important sloka in the Bhagavad Gita. Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraja ayam tva sarva pavebhyo mokshayisyami ma shuchaha. Renounce all dharmas and take refuge in me alone. I shall liberate you from all sins. Grieve not. After explaining everything to Arjuna, this is the final advice to Arjuna. Renounce all dharmas and take refuge in me alone. I shall liberate you from all sins. Grieve not. An embodied being is also an embodiment of karma. An embodied being is also an embodiment of karma. An embodied soul has to work out his karma also. That karma is called dharma, which proves helpful to the Jivatman in his Godward progress. That karma which he has to do is called dharma if it proves helpful to the Jivatman in his Godward progress. On the attainment of Godhood, that helpful dharma itself has to be renounced. After attaining God, that karma which was called dharma, which helped him on his onward path, has also to be renounced, his purpose being fully served. As it has served its purpose, that is also to be renounced. Surrendering himself to the Lord is the culmination of all the endeavors of the Jivatman. After saying everything, finally what is to be said is, surrender yourself at the feet of the Lord. Surrender himself to the Lord is the culmination of all endeavors of the Jivatman. Finally, I must say, I absolutely surrender at your holy feet. I submit to whatever you say. I know that you are the doer of everything. I am only a puppet in your hands. If that attitude is taken, and that is the final thing that we have to take, the import of self-surrender requires to be truly understood. What is self-surrender is not merely prostrating before the deity or a saint and say, I surrender myself at your feet. This attitude must be there. The import of self-surrender requires to be truly understood. It is not the confession of one's inability to discharge one's duty oneself. It is not the confession of one's inability to discharge one's duty oneself. It is not a supplication for an additional help from the Lord after the mode of a troop being replenished. But the self-surrender is like a stream joining the rivulet, a rivulet having its confluence with a river, and a river making itself over to the ocean. It's a very important point. Because I am unable to do this thing particularly, I say, I surrender myself entirely at your feet. Please get this done before me. That is not sufficient, that's not surrender. It is not supplication of an additional help from the Lord after the mode of a troop being replenished. But self-surrender is like a stream joining a rivulet. I am a small rivulet. I am a small stream. I am joining a small rivulet. A rivulet having its connection with a rivulet having its confluence with a river. A small stream goes, it joins a rivulet, and the rivulet joins a big river, and the river making its way to the ocean. It finally enters the ocean. In the beginning, the stream joins the rivulet joins the river, and the river finally joins the ocean. Self-surrender is verily self-fulfillment. The rivulet is now, the small stream has now entered the ocean by submitting itself to the rivulet and the river to the ocean. Self-surrender is verily self-fulfillment. The will of the Jivatman merges in the will of the Lord. The will of the Jivatman merges in the will of the Lord. The rivulet has no will of its own when it merges in the river. The river has no will of its own when it merges in the ocean. So, that is why they say, my will should merge in your will. The Jivatma's will merges in the will of the Lord. The will and the doings of the Jivatman are in reality infinitesimal sparks of the will of the Lord. After all, the will of the Jivatman, which was considered as very important, what was it? It was only a spark of the will of the Paramatman. Self-surrender is verily self-fulfillment. The will of the Jivatman merges in the will of the Lord. The will and the doings of the Jivatman are in reality infinitesimal sparks of the will of the Lord. The Jivatman claims to be doing very, very big things. I am going to do this, I am going to do that, I am going to conquer the moon, I am going to conquer the other planets. But all these attainments are only infinitesimal sparks of the will of the Lord. This we must not forget. The will and the doings of the Jivatman are in reality infinitesimal sparks of the will of the Lord. Karma Yoga raises the sadhaka to the realization of this benign position. Its result is self-surrender. This is real self-surrender. Whatever we have, we merge in the higher power. That is, the stream merges in the rivulet merges in the river, and the river finally merges in the ocean. Some more he said here. The Bhakta, on the other hand, is ever depending on his Lord. The good and the evil that befall him are all viewed by him as the will of the Lord. Therefore, he makes no distinction between the good and the evil. He does not contrast dharma with adharma. From the beginning to the end, the Bhakta feels himself as non-separate from the Lord. Rather, he loses his individuality in the absorbing love of the Lord. If a man walks in the middle of a busy street through absent-mindedness, he runs the risk of meeting with some accident. But the Bhakta's case is different. In his God-intoxicated state, he is not aware of the earthly happenings, and Providence mysteriously protects him even in places exposed to dangers and mishaps. Like a baby in the bosom of its mother, the devotee is under the kind care of the Maker. All the same, the good work that is to be done through that devotee is turned out unawares. Intense thought of God is the self-surrender of the Bhakta. This is the Bhakta who is entirely depending upon the Lord. He says, a Bhakta, when he is remembering the Lord constantly and in that ecstatic state, he may even walk in the center of this busy street. But the Lord takes care to see that he is not harmed in any way by the traffic. That much care is taken by the Lord to protect the Bhakta. Here the Bhakta's self-surrender is his constant remembrance of the Lord. As we were talking about so many stories, when the devotees are merged in the worship of the Lord, they lose themselves in the Lord's worship. The Lord takes care of their mundane activities. He himself takes the form of that devotee and does the work which he was supposed to do. So this is the self-surrender of the bhakta. Self-surrender of different types. Bhakta self-surrender is his constant remembrance of the Lord and entire dependence on the Lord. Now the dawn of knowledge in the jnani is also a form of self-surrender or an act of taking refuge in the Lord. The reflection of the good and the bad things may be seen in a mirror. The reflection of the good and bad things may be seen in a mirror. We see we place some things, some good things and bad things in front of a mirror. The reflection of the good and bad things may be seen in the mirror. And we see the reflection in the mirror. For this reason, the mirror undergoes no modification. Because certain things, good or bad, are placed in front of it, the mirror is not affected by them. The actions known as dharma and adharma belong to the prakriti. The actions which are called dharma or adharma belong to the prakriti. And the Purusha is like a mirror. He is not affected by them. They do not in the least affect the pure consciousness, which is the background of the individual. That is the Purusha, this substratum. He who identifies himself with pure consciousness renounces all upadhis or the limiting adjuncts. What persists in him is the great awareness which knows no distinction such as the internal and the external. The attainment of this supreme state is the act of taking refuge in the Lord. As regards jnani is concerned, he is taking refuge in the Lord means to identify himself always with the substratum, with the Atman, which is the eternal witness of the Prakriti. Om Sri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. Om Sri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. Om Sri Ram Jai Ram Jai. Om Sri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram.